The eyesight of octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish are a marvel of evolution. In the most absolute darkness, they can see the faintest bioluminescence perfectly well, thanks to the sensitivity of their retina, which perceive various wavelengths simultaneously. Projecting both their elastic tentacles 3 times their length, they trap their victims in lightning attacks. Once bound by its other 8 shorter legs, it begins to chew it with its parrot-like beak, which is so characteristic of cephalopods. The bottoms of the Mare Nostrum are systematically combed by a tireless army of sea cucumbers, sea urchins, and starfish in search of food. With the exception of small ocellum found on the tips of the arms of some starfish, these spiny creatures lack any real vital organs. Like the rowers of a Roman galleon, hundreds of perfectly coordinated ambulacral feet do more than just move it. Sensitive epidermal cells are the primary receptors, but their feet also aid in breathing and in the reception of luminous, tactile, and chemical stimuli to help in the difficult task of perceiving its environment. Its mouth, made up of 5 mobile calcareous plaques, like jaws, as well as the modular formation of its dermis that allows it to move its feet with dexterity, render the aphiuroids rather active predators. As with other echinoderms, they possess a very archaic nervous system, made up of a main processing ring, which runs through the disc connecting a radial sensory system that transmits anything touched or felt by its feet. Many fish choose an intense shade of red to go unnoticed before their predators. This is because without artificial light, it reflects a wavelength similar to an undefined shadow that isn't easily perceived. And if they remain immobile, they have a greater chance of surviving another night. These detritus-rich seabeds, spread throughout the continental shelf, are surprisingly fertile places where highly specialized beings live. Although they seem deserted, upon the arrival of nightfall, they come to life in a rush of activity. Some benthic beings use these sediments to hide, hoping not to be seen by their prey or their predators. Almost completely buried, some don't miss an opportunity. And although they're diurnal animals, The voracity of their species makes them attack on reflex. We know very little about this small cousin of the conger eel. Although it's amply extended throughout the sedimentary coastal platforms of the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, and even the Northeast Indian Ocean and Red Sea, the behavior of the so-called Balearic conger eel is still a mystery to science. It is believed that they go through a pelagic phase, and that at a certain age, they go down to the bottom, spending the rest of their lives buried during the day in the great sandy plains of the continental shelf. After sunset, they move around in search of food. It seems that through their marked lateral line and the extreme sensibility of its crystalline skin, they might be able to feel vibrations that warn them of approaching intruders, even when buried in the sand. The spiny spider crab's body is completely covered by rigid, curved hairs to which algae and other elements from the seabed get tangled and thus allow it to blend in with their environment. What's more, this spiny armor deters its predators while it searches for food in unprotected environments. Recently, the acidification of the oceans has affected the Mediterranean in particular. Because it's a closed sea, man-made pollution is drastically varying the acidity of its waters, making it too high for the calcareous shells of crustaceans, which soften as a result of the chemical reaction or don't even reach the necessary consistency to protect them against its predators. Flying gurnards are also widely distributed throughout almost all the warm seas in the world. But like many other species of little commercial value, little is known of them apart from what can be observed when they're captured, generally by trawling. It seems that to market them would be rather unproductive, and they would be too costly to process because of their spiny protuberances. So their already dead bodies are thrown overboard by the thousands. These fantastic beings are basically diurnal. But with the spring full moon, thousands of adult individuals throughout the Mediterranean coast that are dispersed during the day come together, possibly to display their genetic prowess before spawning in absolute synchrony. Unfortunately, this and many other species are endangered due to the loss of their habitat, caused by excessive trawling and pollution. Because of this, we might never find out why flying gurnards come together under the Mediterranean moonlight. Through their rhinophores, Opistobranchia like this one perceive the odors that will lead them to the sponges and acidaceas on which they feed, or to the chemical traces of other kin. They have a small calcareous shell inside their mantle, where they also have gills and reproductive organs. Hermaphrodism is common in these slow-moving species. The sea hare also has an internal shell, a vestige of its evolutionary past. But its parapodium isn't joined at the top, which allows the animal to swim by moving its mantle like a pair of wings. Some Aplesias move with agility through large distances in search of better places to feed, or in the wake of some other sexually interesting individual. They are also hermaphrodites, although in order to constantly renew the species genetically, they crossbreed. Very rarely do they self-fertilize themselves. Reproduction is sexual. Both individuals are capable of providing, receiving, and storing sperm to fertilize the eggs that will lay well attached to any stable surface in the form of a spiral gelatinous sponge. From them, tiny larvae will hatch and survive by floating among plankton in open waters until they develop completely and return to the coastal bottoms to continue their biological cycle. It's estimated that the amount of plant life the oceans produce can be up to 10 times that on dry land, and that marine plants have produced over 85% of the planet's oxygen. The huge areas of phanerogams that extend throughout the Mediterranean shores, besides being primary producers, lend protection and provide food to many species that, together with their prolific interactions with other biotopes, make these Mediterranean tapeweed prairies among the most fruitful in the planet. Beyond the continental shelf, many pelagic beings also feel the call of the moon. From the onset of spring, thousands of bluefin tuna weighing up to 450 kilograms have entered en masse through the Strait of Gibraltar to converge with other groups in various key places in the Mediterranean, where they were born. Throughout their journey, they don't eat a thing. They only have room for their precious genetic cargo, which they will unload in a spectacular dance of fertilization in perfect synchrony with the full moon that hovers above the Mediterranean. Unfortunately, a decreasing number of specimens have been reaching their destination because of their increasing value in the international markets. Too many of them are captured before they're able to unload their legacy at the mercy of the currents. Many opportunists punctually attend the banquet, from Dinofera and jellyfish to long chains of small salps or solitary adults. They all feed on eggs, larvae, and an endless array of microorganisms that, like them, are dragged here by the soft but noteworthy currents of this closed sea. Once fertilization takes place, the tuna's eggs undergo cellular division after a brief incubation period in the placid and warm waters of the Mediterranean. In the meantime, a large number of these eggs will become fodder for active zooplankton, jellyfish, and great filtering cetaceans. The spot chosen is not a coincidence. Somehow, bluefins are aware of the riches of these places. Although they seem infertile, they are in reality a rich garden of microscopic life, sheltering a large variety of phytoplankton and zooplankton formed by the larvae of thousands of species, some of other tuna, and many others of coastal or benthic origin. This guarantees a constant food source for the small tuna when they are born. Young bluefins develop very quickly. Recently hatched, they are active swimmers and highly voracious. In a few months, they will abandon the Mediterranean in herds and will not return until the ages of 3 or 4, when already weighing 30 kilograms, they feel the call of the moon for the first time. Exactly what the tuna does here in the Mediterranean was discovered a very short time ago. After so many centuries, this sea is still a true mystery. Mankind, which has fed off its hand, is now more concerned with prospecting the seabed than with trying to understand the natural behaviors of the species that inhabit it, which is the key to deciphering the secret to ocean regeneration. Instead of this, we are using this huge water surface as an enormous wasteland, polluting and plundering its highly valuable natural resources without allowing it to recuperate. The effects of non-selective fishing endanger hundreds of species that aren't even marketed. And uncontrolled depredation of individuals that have not yet reproduced is devastating. For such an interrelated macroorganism as the Mediterranean Sea, the disappearance of species that are apparently insignificant causes serious imbalances in its global function. We have to understand that each living organism has multiple specific biological functions, and that just because we don't see a species as interesting doesn't mean they're not important. The origins of life on our planet are found in the oceans, and it is precisely because of this that oceans might hold the solutions to innumerable enigmas, many of which continue to be hidden under the dark mantle of the Mare Nostrum after dark. This small ocean, with an incredible capacity to regenerate itself, only needs us to give it a break and to dedicate more individual and collective effort to understanding and protecting it, so that it can accompany mankind along its next evolutionary step, a more sustainable future.